Cool. So what I've been doing, Ryan here. What I've been doing is looking online for genuine CT photos, leaked photos, stuff that I can looking for basically the four races in existence: P24s, P45 J rods, P52 J rods, P52 Orions, and looking at photos online of some of it's hoaxes, or most of it's hoaxes. You know, the stuff online that's uh, purporting to be real, genuine stuff that's been leaked and stuff like that. Most of it's crap, but trying to sort wheat from the chaff, and I've so as I've been cruising along and trying to work out what's going on there, and now the most important things I've found is what I'm pretty sure. Can't be 100% certain, but I'd say I'd be surprised if they aren't genuine pictures of Majeena, tall whites, P52 Orions. The circumstances of the photos, I'm not sure of. I'm a bit concerned about this individual. That these two look like they have intelligence behind their eyes, and you can see that they're alive. I would say this person here may be, but there's something in her face that I'm a bit concerned about there, that she might be no longer with us, or wasn't with us at the time. I don't know how old these pictures are. They have, so this is, I printed this black and white, but um, the images as I found them online, that people have been talking about online, they don't know what they are. There's some people have been posting them and saying they're genuine photos. It's some kind of dump online um, of genuine ET images and blah blah blah. These particular ones are Majeena, tall whites, P52 Orions, and um, there's a lot of variation in the allowing for individuality and whatnot in the faces of Majeena, and the physicality, just as there is in us. And even if you grab someone, like we Homo sapiens have four main races we talk about today: Caucasoids, Mongoloids, Negroids, Australoids. But even if you take an individual race where you just take Caucasoids, Europeans, and consider the different individuality between people, and there's micro races in that, where you look at me and I've got a lot of like Irish, Scottish, Welsh DNA in me, and then you compare, and I'm Caucasoid officially, but you compare me to someone like a Swedish guy, some tall, blonde, darker skinned. I'm white and freckled, but you get like more pure sort of Germanic people, like up in Northern Europe, like say Swedish people, Norwegian people, say, that have sort of more the ability to tan more, the more swarthy sort of skin, blue eyes, white silvery hair. You know, put them side by side with me, and we don't look like. There's massive room for differentiation. And with the Majeena, the tall whites, I'm particularly interested. Like Charles Hall had said, he didn't try to draw them ever. I've heard him talk about on some of his presentations. He doesn't like the idea of trying to draw them because they are all so individualistic. Um, but and he wouldn't like to generalize. Um, I've had a go at drawing the people I've met and seen as best as I can. Um, what particularly strikes me about um, this individual in particular is the shortness of her nose. Now you see here, uh, much larger eyes relative to the size of her face, and then these two are women, and this guy, this is the man in the middle. Um, much shorter nose relative to the rest of her face than I recall ever having seen on any Majeena. His is sort of medium, and then hers is longer. Their noses are of that kind that's more um, uh, obvious and standing out from the face. More of a bridge, slightly, like on some of the individuals I've seen. But I've seen individuals, or at least this is how I'm remembering them anyway. Maybe I'm not remembering them properly, but with much flatter kinds of faces, with noses that are rising, but um, not nowhere near as perceptibly as uh, as these noses. So, um, this individual here looks the most like the sketch done of Julio Fernandez that was taken aboard a craft. I won't say he was abducted because he was invited on board with his dog. Um, and he did a couple of sketches of the beings that he met, and I'll show that now. Yeah, the length, oh, the pronounced nose. I mean, it depends on how all the light was working and all this as well. Um, but the size of the eyes, and you can see here the room for individuality when it comes to this individual here. Her eyes are, I would say, a lot smaller relative to the size of her face than her, and she has um, these larger, more rounded eyes. She has eyes that are more slanted upwards. So we're just talking here about individuals, as you'd imagine. People are all going to be different, still fitting within a particular race, perhaps, but smaller sort of micro types within that. And then we have here the dude in the middle, who has particularly lovely eyelashes. Now, that's something I haven't uh, drawn. I was looking back through my drawings, going, these dudes, their eyelashes are so cool, and you'd expect eyes that large. They don't have covers over them like the J rods, and have like covers and stuff, like lenses over their eyes. The black eyes are lenses over the top. But you'd expect eyes that large to require dirty big eyelashes. Deer like eyelashes, or like on cows, these huge fucking eyes, and then you have the eyelashes larger correspondingly, Um, but anyway, so that's sweet. So we've got here anyway. We've got what I would say. I'd be surprised if these aren't real. They're blue eyes as well. I found versions of these photos and I couldn't quite make out the color, and I was thinking, oh, they look like blue eyes, but then I found other versions that are more obviously blue-grey eyes. The color was quite washed out, and sort of there's an orange. They've been washed with like an orangeness as well to these photos that look like, to me, the kind of quality of photos you get in like the 60s or the 70s or something like that. But what I did is I took the originals, and I noticed that their eyes had a hint of blue, or at least on two of them. On these two individuals, I thought their eyes looked a little bit blue on the original, but then with this one, I was sort of like, I can't really see that. It's impossible to tell what color her eyes are, really. But what I did was I thought I'll increase, just on shitty little programs I got on this. Nothing too snazzy, but I just thought if there's a hint of blue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the color and see if I can increase, because it's all been washed out. It's like all the colors are washed out and they're replaced with sort of like an orange light or an orange wash over the top that I think probably isn't representative of what was actually there at the time. So what I did was I just amped the color up. So that meant that the orange became even more obviously artificial, and the color of their eyes became more obviously blue, but still quite washed out compared to the real pretty blue color of their eyes, the way they actually are. Um, and the dude in the middle there's got a pretty chunky chin on him, so I'd say he's fairly old, and they've all got fairly long necks on them, so none of them are very young. They're going to be, like somewhere between 100 and 300 years old, I would think, because they get to about 6 foot at about 100 years, and then they don't really grow for centuries, and then they hit another window of growth and they grow on again, and by the time they're like getting towards 400 years old, they start shooting up beyond, then like 6.5 foot, etc. These dudes, I'd say, are more like between 100 and 300 years old, and they're probably somewhere around 6 foot tall or a bit over that. And yeah, so there you go. So there's some most likely real photos of Majeena that I've found online, with helmets on. Interesting, the difference. The helmets have a lot of technology in them and things like that as well, so they're not necessarily reflective of the actual size of their craniums. Like, they got shit in there. If they took their helmets off, their craniums wouldn't look so chunky. But these are interesting helmets because they look like they're fitted individually to their heads as well, depending on. So they're tailor-made, or perhaps they're made out of a material that shifts and contorts and suits the head, becomes suitable to every head it sits upon. But the dude in the middle, you see how his helmet comes up fairly high here and then has a nose piece that's sort of coming down a bit. Not coming close across his eyes like some, and then back up again, but actually having like a fairly high arch and then coming across, different to the women on either side. So there it is anyway. So that's sweet. So we've got if they're not genuine Majeena photos, someone has gone out of their way to produce something that looks genuinely like Majeena, like tall whites, like P52 Orions. And the question then is, okay, if they've done that, why would someone produce photos that were replicas of the way they actually look? And then that reminds me of the Skinny Bob video, and how that is very close to a P24 future human. And if it's faked, which some people suggest it is, some people believe it isn't fake, some people say it is. I think there's something running around at the moment. Someone sent me at one stage who's into this, I've forgotten who it was, sorry, um, information about this, saying that they'd been, I think from Reddit or something, people have been discussing it. There's a thread maybe on there. Um, and that the numbers on the side of the film of the Skinny Bob video, at one stage it changes to a new image, but the number keeps running into the new image as though the number's been added later, suggesting it's fake. And anyway, um, well, if it's been faked, it's very, very close to P24's, like I was just saying before about these images. If it's fake, then someone has gone out of their way to copy as closely as possible a genuine race, and then pass it off as real. And why would you do that? So the motive has to be questioned there, and come into play to consider, to ascertain, as you know, as we're just sort of deliberating and considering motives of people as to why they would hoax something. You have to ask yourself, of course, why, especially if they're mimicking something that actually is real. Now, having said that, though, like you got like, again, I had a bit of a look at that old film. I think it's from 1997. It's about uh, the video that was released. They made a video about it. What is it? Here we go. It's got it here. Alien 51, the alien interview. Hang on a sec. The following program deals with controversial subjects. The theories, opinions, and beliefs expressed are not the only possible interpretation of the evidence. Viewers are urged to make a judgment based on all available information. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the documentary came out in 1997, I think it was, and it was based on some footage that had allegedly come out of S4 of an alien interview. And they've got different experts checking it out. Bob Dean said he thought it was real, he just presumed it was real. And then you have a couple of other dudes that are into ufology that thought it might have been real. He had an American, special effects puppeteer dude saying he's not quite sure, because sometimes the being was moving in ways that he thought would be difficult to reproduce, but he wasn't sure. And then another guy said, no, it's definitely fake. That was from that same industry. And yeah, well, I think probably the cranium's too big to be, like, it looks like a P45J, right? Well, that's what they try to copy off. But the cranium is more like the size of a P24. Now, P24s, the ones from Roswell or the Steve Boucher ET, they have more like Megamind type heads, like the character Megamind from the animation Megamind. Um, and they have cute little faces. And whereas P45s, so Bill Uhouse is I'll show the Bill Uhouse sketch now. He is a first-hand direct witness of P45 J rods, and you see how their cranium is much larger than ours relative to our body anyway, but not that huge ballooned head kind of look, which is more like P24s. So, um, yeah, the image, and there's lots of bizarre things. It's sort of a bit odd about that movie, the about the P45, about the Area 51 alien interview from 1997, where it's all shaded so you can't see what's going on, and then when it's choking and people come in to try and help it, all of a sudden there's more lighting and you can see its body, but then the movement could be because of the puppeteers have come in and they're manipulating the object, and now you can show the rest of the body because there's no puppeteer below anymore. It looks a bit dodgy to me, and also the cranium's too big, so it's like they're conflated P24s and P45s together. They haven't understood. Whoever created it hasn't understood that P45 J rods heads craniums aren't all ballooned out like that, so they've mixed two races together. Anyway, and then you got you know P52 J rods, which is like Kyala that Dan Crane, aka Dan Burish, met at S4, worked on at S4, was befriended at S4. Um, and I'll show a sketch of his. Now that sketch, bear in mind, he did that himself, and then the suggestion was as well that P52 J rods don't necessarily look like that when they're in better nick, in better health, but Kyala was particularly distorted from his pathologies, his issues that afflict his race in general, but he was suffering particularly from it, I think, as being older. And then you've got the sketch done at the behest of uh, Dan Crane by, I can't remember his name at the moment, and I'll put his name here because I've forgotten it. Yeah, anyway, I won't try and remember his name for now. But anyway, the aerospace illustrator McCandlish, did can't remember his first name though now. Did a sketch of for Dan Crane, Kyala, and there's a few different drawings that he did. So you've got that. And then you've got Bill Uhouse's idea of P45 J rod, and you can see, and then also a drawing I've done of a P52 J rod. And you can see in general that from these eyewitness accounts, their craniums aren't as ballooned out and big as some of the images. So here's another image of a being that allegedly is a grey that again has this fucking huge head hanging out the back, but is not a P24. Shoot, for a P24, you could have a head like that, but not J rods, not the later issue, the later evolved specimens. whose heads had shrunk again. Still much larger craniums, much larger um, brain capacity, CC. How do you measure that? Cubic capacity of brain than we have relative to our size. But nothing like the P24's got the fucking huge megamind heads having. Anyway, so I haven't been able to find, unfortunately, images online that I think are genuine pictures of P45 and P52 J rods. Just sketches of eyewitness accounts. But P24's Skinny Bob is likely real footage of a P24. That's the Roswell beings. Not actually extraterrestrials, because they hadn't left Earth. They're from 24,000 years in our future from Earth, and they hadn't yet left Earth. So you could say that P45s, P52s, blah, 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 are extraterrestrials because they did an exodus and spent tens of thousands of years elsewhere and then have come back to an ancient version of their own Earth, of their old Earth. So are technically extraterrestrials, I suppose you could say, because but even though their genetic affiliation and vast majority of their genetic history and evolutionary history is in common with us, they've spent a certain amount of time away. A blip, really, in the grand scheme of things. Forgetting what I was talking about. But the P24s, yeah, hadn't left Earth yet. So they're like the Greys before they left Earth, and then the proper Grey, what looks more like a Grey with the dark eyes, smaller, big clawed fingers and stuff. That's from 20,000 odd years further on again in their history. So not just natural selection but a lot of genetic manipulation and engineering is to blame for a lot of these changes as well. They've been fucking with themselves, which is not a good thing because there's a lot of consequences trying to mess with the systemic genomic structure of a human, and you're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to increase the age, and I'm going to make the fingers more dexterous, and I'm going to make the ass bigger, and I'm going to, whatever." Got to get that twerking ass happening. We're going to make our ass bigger. You start messing with things, and you have unforeseen side effects and symptoms popping out. Genomic issues, which is why they've come back here to try and alleviate and set straight all that shit by coming back to us that are specimens of Homo sapiens of their ancient selves before we've started fucking with our own genetics, and also before the catastrophes that would have occurred about now, which will no longer happen, which is lovely. But anyway, so that'll do, I think. Cool, dudes. Thanks very much for that. That was just a bit of a spiel. And I'm very happy that I found images of Majeena online. Ta-da! And probably the only other image of a Majeena that is a photo that is there and anywhere near half good. Actually, there's a couple of images. I was going to say the Chris Bledsoe shadow person image he took was a Majeena allowing themselves to have their photo taken, but also the image from one of those freaking paranormal reality TV show sort of things of a Majeena dropping down and being captured on film by motion detector camera. And you see the mist and shit coming as it moves in a boa suit, though, in their stealth suits. That and the Chris Bledsoe image, they were that I found the two best images of Majeena until now. These are full on close up, deliberately taken images of tall whites. Okay. So there you go. P-52 Orions, Majeena, tall whites. They're the dudes. They're the dudes that are responsible for most paranormal activity the world over. These suspects. These mugshots. Yeah. Cool. Until next time.